Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Afterburners podcast. The jabronis are here. We got one jabroni in Canada. We got two jabronis here in New York. Let's ready to rock and roll. It is Tuesday, March 27th, 2016. I believe this is also our first official episode in the spring, right? In the spring of 2018. So I'm your host, Sam Niedermeyer. With us as always, the master, Bobby Koch, and Mike Jarvis from Canada. Mike, is it still kind of snowing in Canada, or do you have spring weather?
We haven't had any snow for about 2 weeks now. It's cold and rainy and generally miserable today, but yesterday was like 12, 13 degrees. So
is that Fahrenheit or Celsius?
Celsius.
No one knows what that is, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so
everything's Fahrenheit. Adapt to our ways, Mike.
I actually use Fahrenheit in my day-to-day conversations. My wife gets super pissed at me because I'm like, oh, it's 73 degrees today. She's like, I don't know what that means. Speak me.
And on my side here, beautiful, beautiful co-host, Bobby Koch. Bobby, you had some big news kind of come up over the last 4 or 5 days, right? You got another announcement to make?
Yeah, I guess. So I joined Draft Day Consultants, which is a draft consulting, as you can imagine from the name, service, meaning that you could pay the service for time on hours, meaning you get private time with me, one-on-one, where I help you figure out your draft. And it's with some of the brightest minds in the industry. Looking forward to it. Other quick thing I was going to say, when you said today's date, my head instantly did like the Daily Show music, because they always do like March 12th, 2017. Yeah. And then
2018.
Or sorry, yeah. Wow. I keep forgetting what year it is. Clearly I'm with it today, guys.
Let me ask you a question. So people can pay money to like just get you one-on-one. Is this going to turn into some type of like one-on-one cam show where you're slowly divulging into the adult entertainment industry?
I mean, a good friend of mine, Jeff Miller, often does like fantasy advice while he's in the shower. So clearly I'm just going to take that concept and take it a little further.
All right. Mike, would you pay for Bobby's services when he's giving some advice in the shower?
Absolutely, I would. I'd pay top dollar for that.
What's the one situation in which you wouldn't give fantasy advice, Bobby?
I don't know, because honestly, so for those who don't know, I had sinus surgery a few weeks back, and I even thought about like, what if I live streamed this for entertainment purposes and gave fantasy advice during this? So I really don't know. Like, I think I'd have to be unconscious. Otherwise, I'd continue to give fantasy advice.
That's good to know. Actually, you probably, even if you were like if you were like knocked out and
I'd be mumbling stuff.
You'd still be saying stuff about Blake.
I'd be like Blake Bortles had career interception percentages go down every year, just mumbling it under my breath. The surgeons would be like, "What's going on?" And then he'd be like, "Oh, he just really likes Blake Bortles. It's fine."
Mike and I are really hoping that you never orgasm and then say Blake Bortles.
Well, this took a turn.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna get right into the show here. We got a great show for you guys. Today we're going to go over top 12 fantasy quarterbacks from last year, likely to repeat. We'll do some that were outside the top 12 that are likely going to be in the top 12. Our pop culture debate is obviously going to revolve around two iconic shows from the 90s. We'll hit on that briefly. I'm giving you a hint. Bobby and I love one of the shows because we live it every day. We'll discuss what we're going to do with Joe Flacco. But first, before we get into that, of course, we're going to do our afterburns at the end. But before we get into all that, Mike, tell the people where we can find you on Twitter or Cam Soda or any of these other places that you think that people are going to find you, and then we're going to get started.
You guys can find me on Twitter at Mike Jarvis, all one word, MikeGervais. Again, nothing fancy about it, just my name.
Bobby?
You can find me at Wrecked Fantasy. That's REKED Fantasy. And because John Bosch pointed it out, I'm not trying to sound hardcore. That's just my initials. He thinks I'm trying to be some Twitter tough guy, but I'm not.
And you can find me at the Needy One, THENEDIONE. Guys, don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. You can find us at the Afterburners Pod. Subscribe so that anytime a new episode comes out, it comes directly to your feed. You won't have to search for us on YouTube or on Stitcher or on Podbean, which we are also on as well. Real quick, John Bosch thing. I actually really enjoyed his tweet.
I did too.
Like yesterday or 2 days ago, remember, it was a picture of Bobby. He like created a cartoon picture of you as Spider-Man.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a picture of me. It was literally just a picture of Spider-Man that said "Get Wrecked." and it was a fat Spider-Man. And then people really just started attacking my insecurities of my body issues. So that was fun.
By people, you mean me?
Yeah, that was a good time. I enjoyed that.
All right, guys, let's get right into it. Last year we had 12 obviously every year you're gonna have top 12 quarterbacks. This is what we call our QB1. Anybody that plays Dynasty 2QB or Superflex knows this. So we got a list of the top 12 QBs and then QB2, so 13 through 24. Top 12 we have finishing from last year. Now I'm gonna go on to ffstatistics.com/at.
Shout out to our boy Addison Hayes at AmazeHayesRoto, I think is his handle. We'll double check that. _Roto, excuse me.
Yeah, Addison does a really good job on this website. It's a beautiful. I like it because it's super easy to use, and the stats are right there, able to be filtered. It's almost like the fan graphs of like fantasy football, kind of. Maybe not as in depth.
I'd say, yeah, I don't know. I'd say that's more Pro Football Reference, but this is definitely a good tool to have, and anyone who's not using it should definitely check it out. I use it for almost every article I write now.
So we're going to look over this list of 12, and then we're going to go look over the list of 24. And then we're going to talk about which quarterbacks are going to drop out of the top 12, out of the top 24, or vice versa, are going to move into the top 12. So I'm just going to run off the top 12 names real quick. Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, Alex Smith, Tom Brady, Kirk Cousins, Carson Wentz, Phillip Rivers, Matthew Stafford, Drew Brees, Dak Prescott, Ben Roethlisberger, and Jared Goff. Guys, that's the top 12. Just looking at the top 12, I think we're all probably good on like the first 6.
Real quick, right? Sam, who just missed the top 12 last season? Number 13?
Looks like Blake Bortles.
That's all I needed to hear.
Yeah, right. Okay. Mike, are there any? So I know it's a long list here. Off the top of your head, first name that comes out to you that possibly can't repeat in the top 12. Who do you think of when you think of that?
Well, the obvious one's Alex Smith. So I'm not gonna divulge into that anymore. This may come as a shock, but I'm gonna say my boy Breeze.
Son of a goddamn it, Mike.
You can tell we didn't compare show notes.
So that's gonna be tough to say because Drew Brees is your boy.
Drew Brees is my boy. I literally have a giant stand of him in my basement as we speak. And as people who listen to the show know, I'm a Saints fan. But Drew Brees is still a great real-life quarterback. And he's still a good fantasy quarterback. But as far as being an elite fantasy quarterback anymore, I think those days are probably done. The Saints are shifting more and more to a run-heavy game with Ingram, Kamara, trying to bleed that clock, a little ground and pound football. They don't quite have the same wide receivers that they had, back in their heyday when they had Colston, Lance Moore, Robert Meacham. Now you've got Michael Thomas, Ted Ginn, who I do believe is criminally underrated, especially in a best ball format. And then you've got Brandon Coleman, who's you had Willie Snead, who's probably out the door and who had just an awful year both on and off the field last year. You had Kobe Fleener, who he suffered the unfortunate concussion late in the year. I think it was week 12, maybe, against the Rams. But even before that, he had 2 touchdowns the first 3 games of the year and then didn't do much. And so the weapons aren't necessarily there. The Saints don't have a second-round pick in this year's draft. And I gotta believe they'll probably... I think they might go tight end with their first-round pick. If not, they'll probably look for help up on the offensive line. So I don't see them getting one of those top-tier wide receivers coming in. And, Breeze, he's getting up there. He can still sling it. He'd still be, a top 3 choice for me in real life, just the way that he manages the game and whatnot. I can't believe I just called Drew Brees a game manager. I'm so sorry. But, so yeah, as far as fantasy, I definitely wouldn't be shocked to see him slip in for like the 14th or 15th overall spot.
Bobby, you said you're looking at Drew Brees, right?
Well, funny enough, I said God damn it, but earlier today I wrote up some notes, and I know not many people watch our YouTube, but just in case, I wrote another player just in case Mike decided to go with Drew Brees.
But by the way, if you are looking on YouTube, he's showing the notes. Unfortunately, the camera angle is put it to.
Yeah. Also, my handwriting's really terrible anyway, so you wouldn't see anything.
Bobby's got to work on position of the camera if he's going to become a cam model.
But that's true. I do need to work on my camera work. Anyway, so my second option was Jared Goff.
He was also going to be my second option.
Well, he's my option now, and you can't have him. So I was saying Jared Goff because he lost Matt LaFleur, who helped the Rams have, I think it was the number one scoring off. It was the number one scoring offense last year. Sammy Watkins has also left, and while I'm not the biggest Sammy Watkins fans these days, he's scored something ridiculous over the last 3 or 4 games, like 8 touchdowns in 4 games or something like that. And that obviously impacts Goff's QB scoring, and I believe he would have missed the top 12 had it not been for all those TDs that Sammy scored. And also, he now has Josh Reynolds replacing Sammy. Josh Reynolds is someone that I like, but he's not quite on the same talent level as Sammy Watkins. So I could see them going back to relying a bit more on Todd Gurley. And with that in mind, I still really like Jared Goff long term. And just as an aside, I have him as something like my QB 5 or 6 for dynasty purposes. And I know that's a very, very hot take. But I do think that there's a chance he could slide down into that 15 to 18 range this season if things don't break right.
Mike, you mentioned Alex Smith. That was actually the one guy that stood out to me immediately. I think I'm with both of you guys here. I think Breeze goes down a little bit, but I think he's still – I don't think he's going to drop out of the top 12. I think he'll be right on the cusp, maybe around like 12, 11. But Alex Smith is going to a Redskins team that doesn't have Andy Reid in the offensive game plan there to kind of keep those high completion percentage passes, kind of like almost like an extension of the running game. Now, I realize that Alex Smith did throw a lot of deep balls last year. I get that, and he actually had a high completion percentage. But the Redskins don't have any weapons that are really deep threats. I mean, maybe Crowder, and I don't see Alex Smith taking advantage of that offensive line isn't as good as the Chiefs. I just don't see him doing the same thing. He finished 295 points this year, which is third best for all quarterbacks. Am I way off base here, Bobby? Mike, am I like thinking that Alex Smith is no way going to come near his 2017 self?
No, he's not. He was QB3 and he had a career year. They don't have. I mean, some people say Josh Doxson. Josh Doxson is not that good in my opinion.
I'm a Doxson truther, so
yeah, people just like him because of his athletic measurables and where he was drafted. He could be something, but you're relying for Alex Smith on Jordan Reed staying healthy. I think most of his points are going to come from throwing to the slot with Crowder, who's not really a deep guy, throwing dump offs to Chris Thompson, who might, run it up in a screen. But I don't think he'll still, don't get me wrong, Alex Smith will still be a very reliable QB2, but I don't think he's coming anywhere near the top 12.
Yeah. I think Thompson's their best weapon. That makes the most sense. Mike, I know you had some stock in this guy last year. Dak Prescott, he finished, looks like he finished 10th last year with 260 fantasy points. You think he's going to be a QB1 again?
I think so, especially with the new catch rule. Des caught it, so he's automatically a wide receiver 1. I had to get that in.
Also added Allen Hurns.
Oh, exactly. They added Allen Hurns. They've got Zeke back, who he won't face the suspension. Before Zeke went down, Dak was having a really, really great year. And then all of a sudden, Zeke went down. Their O-line took a hit. I don't remember the name of the guy on the O-line that went down. But he was pretty vital to Dak's success as well. So when you compound that and Zeke getting suspended, that really, really hurt Dak. And, the Cowboys, I said Dez is going to be a wide receiver 1. That was clearly a joke, but Dez is still a solid WR2. And I like him. He's not what he was, but getting Hurns will definitely help Dak. It will give him another weapon. You've got Old Man Witten, who, he seems like he's probably a nice guy in real life, but doesn't do much fantasy-wise. I mean, he's consistent as a tight end, low end tight end 1, high end tight end 2, but he's old. One of those years.
Witten's put up tight end 1 numbers in quite a few years, Mike.
I could be wrong.
I don't know about that, but I don't think he has.
I saw. I don't have the stats in front of me right off the top, but I remember seeing something the other day about when that really surprised me. I was like, "Oh, holy shit! Maybe he isn't as bad as we all think he is." But at any rate, he is Dak's safety valve. There was a game there. Oh, it was Thanksgiving against the Chargers. That again, penalties happen that shouldn't. But Dak had like a 30-yard or 35-yard touchdown run that got negated because of a bullshit hold call. So I mean that changes the outlook a little bit as well. But I definitely like Dak going forward. I think if you're looking to acquire him, you could probably get him.
Oh yeah.
Fairly cheap considering the bit of a down year that he had last year, and he won't cost you near as much as he would to get as he did this time last year.
It sounds like of our top 12, how many are going to be returning as top 12?
Russell Wilson will repeat.
Yep.
Cam Newton, probably Brady. Cousins definitely. Rivers always seems to do it. Stafford. Breeze is questionable. I'd say Dak probably. One question I actually had for you, Mike, read Dak, is do you think Zeke being back actually hurts him at all? Because as we've discussed before, a lot of Dak's value does come from rushing and getting rushing touchdowns. So if Zeke's back, he might actually lose some rushing touchdowns, which hurts his fantasy value.
Yeah, that's a debate that a lot of people have had. And I could see him losing a little bit of rushing value with Zeke back. But in all in all, I think it helps him. Because when Zeke went down, you had Rod Smith and McFadden. And neither of those guys definitely scream, holy shit, this guy's going to break off a 70-yard touchdown run. So defenses could not quite stack the box like they would have to, more so against Zeke. Zeke's that weapon, and he can catch the ball as well. So I think, he might vulture maybe 10 rushing yards a game from Dak and maybe 2 to 3 touchdowns on the year. But overall, I think it helps. Was that?
Like, it sounds like you had 8 returning. Mike.
Well, I didn't quite finish the list. So then I was just going to say Big Ben seems like he has the offense to do it, but I do know that he's been kind of declining for years now. And you would know more about that being a Steelers fan.
Well, it's not that. Look, here's the thing. Like, you might think he's been declining, but this year, his last year was actually the best he's had in about 4 years. I mean, you got Antonio Brown. That's going to help you out.
Yep.
Le'Veon Bell's a safety valve, so there's some receptions right there. Juju, he's a stud. He likes to use both tight ends a lot. The only thing I can see that would hurt him is interceptions.
Yep.
I don't see him not leaving. Like, he'll probably finish right around where he did this year, right around 10th or 11th, I think.
So here's a question for you, Sam, regarding Ben. Do you think these crazy home road splits continue going forward? Because he was atrocious on the road.
Yeah, no, it will. It will. He's a much better player at home. But that being said, like, this is the type of guy when he's at home, he's very capable of throwing for 506 touchdowns, like in a game. I mean, like, he's the only player that's ever thrown for 500 yards twice in games 3 times, I think, right? So, and they were all at home. I mean, he basically just, if you just lob it to like Antonio Brown on the sideline, he'll make it a ridiculous catch. That's like 40 yards, and he didn't do anything. He just threw it to Antonio Brown. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like he's going to be like the guy, like, especially if you're in a 1 quarterback league where you have Roethlisberger, maybe on the road, it's not a good matchup. Go ahead and start your second QB. And obviously he had a tough game against the Jaguars this year, but outside of that outlier where he had 5 interceptions, he was a stud.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, Bob, you had 9, I believe it was, out of the 12.
I'd say 8 are probably locks. 9 are questionably in.
So 8. So it's a hard 8 and a soft 9.
Yeah.
so Mike, real quick, on the top 12, what would be your number of returning?
Yeah, I would say probably around there, 8, 9. I'm not as confident, and I'm going to take some flack for this. I'm not as confident as Bobby is about Phillip Rivers coming into the top 12. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he didn't. Phillip Rivers since 2010,
Mike, by the way, has had, I think, one season where he hasn't been a QB1.
Well, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he did or didn't. Out of all the guys that, except for the guys that we talked about, Breeze and Goff, Rivers would probably be my next bet to not repeat, other than Smith as well. But Rivers is kind of like the mashed potatoes. He's always there, and you're like, oh damn, this is pretty good once you divulge into it. But it's never your first choice.
Yeah, I'm looking at I see Rivers and Stafford as the most consistent of obviously Brady and Wilson, but of the middle ones that would be kind of what you could see everybody they just keep putting up numbers like Rivers and Stafford, so I think they're safe. Let's move on to the QB2, right? So I'll give you guys a list, and then you can say off the top of your bat who's going to stand out as possibly not returning as a QB2, and then we can talk about anyone that's going to be moving up to QB1 from this list or even from outside this list. So team, Bobby, who's that?
Blake Bortles.
Then we have Case Keenum, Matt Ryan, Tyrod Taylor, Andy Dalton, Marcus Mariota, Jacoby Brissett, which that shocked the hell out of me, but then it made sense after I realized that, all the problems they have at quarterback there. Josh McCown, Derek Carr, Jameis Winston, Eli Manning, and Joe Elite Flacco. Bobby, let's the three of us let's wait on Joe Flacco, because I think we're going to talk about that in just a little bit after this segment. So Bobby, of these guys, is there anyone you see that's there's no way he's ever going to be a QB2 again?
Well, QB2 is not that high a standard. I realize that there are less QB2s than there are starters, but you basically just have to be a decent starter to be a QB2
and not be injured, right?
Yeah. So, I guess if Andrew Luck is healthy, that means Jacoby Brissett would fall off. If the Jets take, Baker Mayfield or Josh Rosen falls some at 3, Josh McCown is obviously not repeating as a top 24. The guy that you mentioned there that I do want to touch on, and I'd actually have him moving up, is Marcus Mariota. So Marcus Mariota finished last year as the 18th best quarterback. He threw more interceptions than he did touchdowns, although with his rushing touchdowns, he had more total touchdowns than interceptions. He played all season with a hamstring injury. He also had Coach Malarkey, who is not Jeff Fisher, but is almost as bad as Jeff Fisher, where he wanted his exotic smash mouth, whatever he called it, offense that just didn't work. And he has Corey Davis developing. And speaking of Matt LaFleur earlier, he's now the offensive coordinator for the Titans. So Marcus Mariota is, if I had to bet right now on anybody to finish as a QB1 this season that didn't last season, Marcus Mariota is my guy.
Mike, does that sound right with Mariota?
If you want to get on board the hype train, sure.
Well, didn't Mariota miss some time this year too?
He missed 4 or 5.
Hamstring injury.
Yeah, I mean, Mariota might be fine. He's another guy who's the hype got really high on him about a year ago, and so he was going to cost you just an exorbitant amount of capital to acquire. I think his stock might have fallen a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes in the top 12. Bobby made some great points. The guy who I'll say from that group who I could see moving up, I might take some flack for this, and it pains me to say it a little bit. I could see Matt Ryan coming back up into the top 12. You've got another year with Sarkisian as the offensive coordinator. That Falcons offense looked really, really good that last month of the season, and aside from the game where they got eliminated, and it looked good in the playoffs as well. But I think when Sarkisian first came over, it took the Falcons and Ryan a long time to fully understand what he was doing. I'm not a Sarkisian fan, but I think we saw towards the end of the year when the Falcons are healthy what they can do. Julio is still a great, great threat. You've got one of the best backfields in the league in Coleman and Freeman. So, like we mentioned with out in Washington doing the little dump off Thompson, I could see, you throw a little screen pass to Tevin Coleman. He runs it up 25 yards. Boom. So I could see Ryan coming up. I think the Falcons will be better this year, and I think Ryan will be better as well.
Well, he's got to find Julio in the end zone if he wants to get some of those points up there, man. The guy's like invisible inside the red zone.
Yeah, a stupid amount of red zone targets too.
Well, I don't know if I see Ryan going back to QB1 just because Shanahan's not there anymore. But also, I actually agree with you. But I think Mariota makes the most sense. He's basically only about 20, 30 points from outside QB1. That's like three. I mean, that's
he also and
right
he missed some games, and we forgot that he now has. Don't get me wrong, Marco Murray was good at catching passes, but they signed Dion Lewis, who is one of the top guys at catching passes out of the backfield. Has, I think, one of the top elusivity ratings in the NFL. So that adds a lot of points right there.
Who's Mike? So you see someone move QB1. Who's going to drop out? I mean, granted, this is like a kind of a loaded question, anyways. But like, because it all depends on who gets hurt or what have you. But is there anybody that stands out immediately where it's like I don't even like any of these QB2s? Would you like not want to just draft at all because you're just scared of the situation, or maybe they're just not going to have a good year?
Yeah, that's such a loaded question because it depends on injuries and what happens in the draft. You know, Bobby touched on McCowan. I can see Tyrod taking a seat again in Cleveland if they go with a guy like Darnold.
Plus, they have the great Hugh Lewis there teaching people how to play quarterback.
Exactly. Other than that, you know, again, if Luck's healthy, Brissett's going to ride the pine, so there's no chance he'll come up into the QB2 unless I read yesterday that the Colts have gotten some trade offers for Brissett. They're not looking to deal him if the offer's right, they will. So again, I'd say Taylor, McCowan, Brissett, depending on health and the other quarterbacks. Everybody else that you mentioned that was a QB2, I think they're probably pretty safe going in next.
Eli Manning is another one that's questionable because if they take a quarterback at 2, then I mean it seems reasonable that they might have them sit for a year because not everyone's going to start their rookie quarterback right away, and there's been some studies that show that it actually hurts their development to start them right away.
Yep.
But you know, let's say they take Josh Rosen or somehow Darnold falls to the Giants and they take him. I could easily see there being an actual competition for who's going to be the starter. And if Eli somehow loses that competition, then he's not going to finish as a top 24 option either.
Last year, Jared Goff went from 50. I mean, he looked terrible and stuff about this. Jared Goff was, and when I say last year, I mean the 2016-2017 season, his rookie year. He was historically terrible. Then he jumps up to QB1 after they get McVay, right? That's the coach over there from DC. He jumps up to QB1. Is there anybody off the top of your list that's not on this list, and maybe somebody that's maybe in college, or maybe a backup or starter or whatever? Is there anybody not on this list that could jump up to a QB1? I think there's probably one that we're all thinking of, right? Like the easy one.
I don't even know who you're thinking.
Jimmy G, Garoppolo.
Well, yeah, Jimmy.
I was thinking somebody else. I was thinking Watson.
Yeah,
Deshaun Watson. That's true. That's a good point.
He was hurt, so yeah. The thing is, there could be a lot of variance in the top 12. The thing about Jared Goff in particular is his rookie season wasn't as bad as people thought. Matthew Stafford actually had a worse rookie season than him. So did Eli Manning, and both of them went on to have QB1 seasons. So there was some hope for Goff. Obviously, I didn't think he'd have as good a sophomore year as he did. But I don't know, besides, as you mentioned, Garoppolo, and yeah, Watson was hurt. So maybe, you know, earlier I said there'd be 8 guys that were repeating. But honestly, I could see Watson being a top 12 guy. I could easily see Jimmy G being a top 12 guy with Kyle Shanahan calling the shots. So there might be more guys falling out of the top 12 than we're willing to admit.
Also, Aaron Rodgers coming back from injury too. You got to figure he's probably
Aaron Rodgers. Oh yeah, Aaron Rodgers wasn't even on the list. Yeah, so
you got to figure.
What I said about 8 or 9 people repeating, I'm gonna change that and say it's more
6
like
to 7.
No, I'm gonna go even lower and say like 5 to 6. Like half of them might repeat.
Because then you don't. That's not even including any type of variance like injury.
Right.
Like top of my head. Real quick, I want to ask about this guy too. Carson Wentz. Is there going to be any regression from him coming back from an ACL injury?
Oh yeah, that's also another guy that could finish as a QB1. Honestly.
Yeah. I don't think there will be. I think we've seen enough from Wentz in the 2 years he's been in the league. Tearing your ACL sucks, but I think as long as he comes back fully healthy, I have no reason to think that he's going to be anything less than what he was from what we've seen so
Don't
far.
get me wrong. I really like Carson Wentz. I did see a scary comparison, though, which is if you guys remember, under Chip Kelly, Nick Foles had that insane season.
Right.
So the numbers for Carson Wentz in his sophomore season and Nick Foles in that season look eerily similar. I'm not saying that they're the same guy at all, and I think Carson Wentz is worlds better than Nick Foles, despite Nick Foles being the Super Bowl MVP. But that does scare me a little because it's just a reminder that guys can have these insane numbers and then fall off a cliff.
Speaking of insane, am I insane for thinking that Jameis Winston won't finish as a QB2 next year?
Yes.
All right, moving right along.
You are insane.
You know what? That's my hot take. I say Jameis Winston does not fall into QB2 range. Or
The
QB1.
Afterburners podcast does not endorse this take. That is a Sam Nedemeyer alone
You
take.
can't even pronounce my last name correctly.
Niedermeyer, excuse me.
I don't know. I'm kind of with Sam on this.
Yeah, I mean, look, his product. I mean, granted, he's been dealt with an injury last year, but his numbers have gone consistently down by at least 20 points per year. And this year, went down 50. Again, I know he's has had his injury troubles, but with so many quarterbacks coming back this year, and so many like guys like Jimmy Garoppolo, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, who aren't even on these lists, people are going to have to fall.
That offense is too good for him not to repeat as a top 24 option.
Unless he's just not good.
Yeah.
We're going to find out. That'll be fun.
With John Paul Hurley, otherwise known as JP, who is one of the co-owners of Dynasty Trade Calculator. I call him Mr. Trade Value. I believe his Twitter handle is @DTC_John H. It might not be that. If it isn't, I will fix that later. But we were talking about it, and he was saying, what are you doing with Joe Flacco in 2 quarterback or super flex leagues? And I basically sent him a throw-up emoji or something like that.
Twitter handle was correct, by the way.
Oh, cool. Anyway, he convinced me that Flacco is actually a good buy because you can get him for a cheap enough price, and he's coming off a back injury that you can then flip him in season to someone who gets desperate for a starting quarterback, which anyone who plays in 2 quarterbacks or super flex know that people overpay for starting quarterbacks. So even though I personally don't want Flacco on my team, if I could get him for like a 3rd round pick or something like that, you could then flip him and turn him into something better than that in season. So it's not necessarily about acquiring Joe Flacco to keep him on your team. It's about acquiring Joe Flacco to turn him into additional value.
What do you think, Mike?
So value is everything. And, like you said, Bobby, you can buy him low and hopefully sell him high. I thought I was going to be able to do that with Keenum last year. Like, I picked Keenum up off the scrap heap, and I think it was week 4 or something. And I put numerous offers or messages out on the message board and league chat saying, Keenum available. And all I got was a 4th round pick for him. And then you sold him like 3 weeks later for, a 3rd round pick or something like that?
Yeah, I was stupid, though. I thought he wasn't going to start for much longer.
And that's why I sold him to you for that 4th, because I thought he was done too. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I
get it.
It's all value. If people aren't willing to spend their capital, then Joe Flacco still sucks, and he's going to ride your pine. The thing is, though, this was my 2nd year playing Dynasty this past season. First year playing Dynasty, people were going mad buying quarterbacks in the 2 quarterback league. The prices were absurd. What I found last year is more people were willing to just punt that 1 week where they needed a fill-in rather than dispose of any, real valuable assets to acquire a guy like Flacco for 1 week.
You do also have to keep in mind, though, Mike, that was one league that you played in.
Right.
And markets are different in different leagues. So, sure, in that one league, yeah, you might have sold Flacco for or Case Keenum for a fourth. However, in most leagues that I've seen, Keenum was going for a second or higher at certain points last season. So, on the one hand, I agree with you, but on the other hand, there's also different markets in different leagues. So it all depends. And what I'm saying is I'll take the chance on Flacco for a 3rd-round pick, which is like 80% likely to never become relevant in the NFL, and take that chance on a starter and see if I can either flip him, or if not, he's a bye-week fill-in for me, and all I lost was a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, I definitely see the merit in it. I just think that more and more people are starting to go the way of saying, fuck it, I'm not going to trade anything of substantial value to buy a quarterback who's really only going to play 1 week, maybe 2, depending on buys.
Bobby, you said Flacco was a good buy. I think the only good buy I'm doing with Flacco is saying goodbye. I don't think I would ever want to take him. Although I have to admit, you do make a very good argument on giving away like a 3rd-round draft pick for him. I think and then if you have that your one of the quarterbacks on a bye, you could plug him in. I actually I did that last year, and I was in a 1-quarterback league. And the reason I did that is because everybody had scooped up all the quarterbacks, and then people were hurt. So I can see the potential in.
Or if someone gets hurt, suddenly you have an extra quarterback and you can make a profit.
Yeah, and you could trade him for higher, right? Get somebody's 2nd-round pick for that, and you essentially just moved up around for nothing.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, it's it's all about value. And like I said, I had a discussion last week with somebody on Twitter. I don't remember who it was. Just because I sell you something for $100 doesn't mean it's worth $100. That's the price you're willing to pay. And then, if I buy something for $100, same thing. Doesn't mean it was worth it. It could have been worth $200. It's all what, value is what people are willing to pay. And it's like that in anything in real life too.
Those are words of wisdom from the great Mike Jarvis. Thank you very much. We appreciate that, guys. We're running low on time. This was a good discussion. I think we got a lot of stuff from fixing the world's problems. One person we didn't mention that I also think is just going to be a complete waste is Andy Dalton. I could see him leaving the top 24 as well to become a QB3. So him and Jameis are on that QB3 train. But we're going to have to move on to our afterburns of the week. I've got a very good one, and it's kind of been trending on Twitter now, and we had some different discussions. Does anybody want to go first, or you want me to fire mine away?
Go ahead.
All right. That's what I was hoping to hear. So this Disney Pixar bracket came out in honor of the NCAA tournament. Now, I like the concept of choosing different Disney and Pixar movies, but what I have a problem with, though, is the selection committee's decision on the seating here. All right? A lot of it makes sense. Of course, on the Disney side, they forgot movies like Snow White and Fantasia. What are some other ones? Beauty and the Beast. Oh, no, they have Beauty and the Beast. Cinderella's not on there. A lot of classics, Fox and the Hound, stuff like that. But I guess it's the South Pixar region. Listen to these teams playing against each other: Ratatouille, A Bug's Life, Finding Nemo, Inside Out, Monsters Inc., Cars, The Incredibles, and WALL-E. Now, selection committee, if you're listening to me, that is an insane bracket. That is so fucking terrible for anyone to come out of one team to come out of that bracket. The Incredibles is amazing. It's squaring off against WALL-E, which is also solid. Then you got Ratatouille, Monsters Inc., all in the same bracket. Those are 3 of the final 4 teams, if you ask me, on this entire bracket. So selection committee, I'm burning you jabronis. You really fucked this one up this time again.
To be fair to the selection committee, after I explained to Sam that you had to have Disney and Pixar on one side, he did say it made a little bit more sense. And we both determined that the TLDR of this bracket is that Pixar just has so many better movies than Disney does, even though Pixar is now part of Disney. You got anything else on your burn there, Sam, or are you done?
My rant is completed.
Mike, what do you got this week?
What I got this week, and I'm sure our good buddy Mark will agree with me here. Drivers
at Walt Sanity, for those of you.
Walt Sanity. Drivers in southwestern Ontario have to be.
I think we lost Mike.
It's like we lost Mike, so I will just go to my afterburn, which is going to be people who don't like Seinfeld.
Thank you.
There is something wrong with you if you don't like Seinfeld. Here's a great example of why I like Seinfeld. A few years ago, I was discussing with a coworker of mine asked me, do you tip your masseuse? And we had an entire 30-minute conversation about that. And you know what that would happen in? Seinfeld. Because in Seinfeld, they literally talk about nothing, like whether you tip your delivery driver or whether you... I'm trying to think of some other examples off the top of my
just
head.
any type of conversation you can have.
Yeah, and it's the minutia of life, and it nails it. So the debate came up because we were talking about Seinfeld versus Friends. I love Friends. Don't get me wrong. Friends is a great show. My fiance loves Friends. She's mad that I like Seinfeld better. Friends is what New Yorkers wish their life was like. We wish that all our apartments looked that unrealistically big.
They live in a freaking mansion.
We wish that we had friends that we hung out with all the time, but really they live in different boroughs and we don't see them pretty much ever.
And how do you get the same couch in a prime real estate coffee shop?
Yeah, that doesn't happen ever. Meanwhile, Seinfeld is what it's actually like. You have probably two close friends you hang out with. You complain about everything.
Can't really afford the third friend. That's just getting too much.
Yeah, you might have two friends, or maybe just a friend you hang out with. You complain about everything. You go to a deli. You eat the meat there. It's probably not the best meat. Sometimes you get denied soup from someone. And
sometimes you get stuck on the subway.
Yeah.
Kenny Rogers Chicken has neon signs out across the street, so it's up 24/7.
And you slowly turn into probably a terrible person from living in New York, just like they all did at the end of the show. So, Larry David, hats off to you. You did it. You captured the true essence of being a New Yorker. And anyone who has a problem with Seinfeld has a problem with me.
That's pretty deep. Mike, are you back?
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We got you.
So, I guess I have a problem with you, Bobby, because I have a problem with Seinfeld. And again, maybe it's because I live in Canada and not New York, but watching it growing up when my sister watched it, I just never found it funny. There was the odd chuckle here and there, but it was never a show that I was like, holy shit, I've got to watch it this week. And that's all.
Why you didn't find it funny?
Why?
Because you watched it as a goddamn child. Watch it as an adult, and it's funny. It's not meant for children.
Irrelevant. Anyways. My afterburn of the week, as I said, our good buddy Mark at Walt Sandy can probably attest to this. Drivers in southwestern Ontario have to be the fucking worst drivers ever. Okay, so I know you guys live in New York, so you don't really drive, but do you have driver's licenses?
Yes, I have a driver's license.
Okay, so if you're driving a car, would you fucking use your signal light to change lanes?
Sure.
Yeah, I would say that should be a common assumption.
Yeah, should be, right? Apparently, in my city, Kitchener, Ontario, fucking idiots don't know how to use their goddamn signal light on how to change lanes. We also have
burns are always very specific to Canada.
We also have these things called roundabouts. Do you guys have roundabouts in New York?
Not really, but we kind of do.
New Jersey has a lot of roundabouts.
Yeah, there's a lot in New Jersey. Okay, we know what you're talking about.
We have a lot of roundabouts here. People need to learn how to fucking drive in them. It's not that goddamn hard.
Let me ask you a question. Who's got the right of way? The person in the roundabout or the person that's coming into the roundabout?
Sorry, rephrase that. You cut out.
What? So when you approach a roundabout, who's got the right of way? The person that's in the roundabout or the person that's actually going into the roundabout?
Person that's in.
Right. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Look to your fucking left. If there's a car coming, don't fucking go in it. If there's no car to your left, go in. You're clear. As you guys both know, I was in an accident there back in December, and it sucked. Driving home from work the last few days, I was legitimately almost in probably 3 accidents in a 2-day span. Also, coming home from work on Sunday night, I was approaching a roundabout. I saw a car that was obviously in an accident who was facing the wrong goddamn way. I don't know how that's even possible.
Oh man! So what I'm gathering from Mike these last couple of weeks is that Canadians, one, are rude at fast food restaurants. Two, the internet doesn't work, and three, they don't know how to drive.
Yeah, Canada doesn't sound as good as a place as I thought it was.
For all the things they do right, these three things really irk me.
I mean, it's possible that we don't know how to drive because people are like, fuck it. If I get in an accident, I can just go collect my free health care.
Or if you get in an accident, you can just say, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm
sorry there, bud. You know what's funny about that is it's totally true. So when I was in my accident there in December, I was pissed when the guy hit me, like livid. So I get out of the car and the guy gets out of his car. And the first thing he says is, oh, sorry there, bud. I didn't see ya. And instantly I was like, it's okay, man. No. Even though that accident ended up costing me thousands of dollars that I couldn't collect because insurance is a fucking scam. But anyways,
now I have a burn, which is Canadian drivers, stop trying to kill Mike. We need him to record this show. Maybe if you do, we could have his ghost on, but I'd much rather just have him on than his ghost. So please stop trying to kill him. I don't know what the proper way to get you to not do that is. Maybe I have to send you some. What was that beer I used to drink that was Canadian? Mike, do you know? It's like a really not good beer.
Labatt Blue?
Labatt Blue. I'll send every Canadian that doesn't hit Mike a case of Labatt Blue. And if you don't come close to hitting Mike, you get 2 cases of Labatt Blue.
So Labatt Blue is basically dog piss, but I will say it is better than Molson Canadian. Molson Canadian has to be the worst Canadian beer around.
All right. Great show today, guys. We are going to have to close it out, but final comment is definitely that we are looking for sponsorships from Canadian beer places, Canadian beer companies such as...
Specifically, Labatt Blue.
Great show today, guys. You can find Mike at Mike Jarvis on Twitter, Bobby at Wrecked Fantasy. Of course, this is the Afterburners podcast. Find us on Twitter, as well as iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, YouTube. Bobby's going to be doing some great things in terms of one-on-one fantasy consultancy, so don't be afraid to go out there and grab him for 30. But that's just the way it is. Thanks so much for listening, guys. You can find me at The Needy One. We'll tune in next week. And, hey, don't forget to say what your favorite thing is in terms of what you're listening to, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Write us a review. Also going to be looking for some hosts. So if you're in the mood to...
By host, he means guest.
Guest hosts. If you're in the mood to talk some fantasy football with us, shout us a line on Twitter. Thanks a lot, and have a great week. Stay clear of those Canadian drivers.
Keep it classy, fantasy Twitter.